Some people feel the rain, others just get wet. Bob Marley. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali, and it is a pleasure being here with you this evening. Good evening to everyone joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Tonight's topic is an update on oil, bauxite, manganese, and forestry, as well as the challenges in this sector. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narine from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Professor Mahendra Hariraj.
Good night, Shamiza. Good night,
Right.
everyone.
Our panelists are Professor Narayan Prasad and Dr. Ganga Ramdas.
Hello, good evening.
Evening, welcome. Our guest tonight is the Minister of Natural Resources, the Honorable Vickram Outar Bharrat. Welcome, everyone. Please go ahead, Mahendra.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure seeing everyone here. And Minister Bharrat, thanks for taking time off from your busy schedule to provide us an update. I know a lot of news is emanating from Guyana, given the focus our country has garnered with its oil discovery and its massive economic and social transformation. This evening, I know you have a lot of information to share with us, but I would like for you to begin by providing a very uh, topical update on the oil and gas sector. I know the president, the vice president provides constant information in this regard, but can you share with us some key updates that this sector has seen in the last maybe quarter, and also what are some of the opportunities and challenges that you foresee?
Thank you, Mahendra. Let me say good evening to all our viewers, wherever you're tuning in from. And also, let me start out by thanking Shamiza, Mahendra, you, and the other panelists who are on here this evening and who have been working very hard to keep this program going and to allow us the platform to share what is happening in Guyana to the diaspora and all those who are interested in what is happening in Guyana generally. I wish to also thank, I know there are many sponsors who make this possible. So I wish to thank them too on all of us' behalf, because it's important that as a government and as a country, we have a platform which we can share information to Guyanese living abroad and also for those who are tuned in from Guyana as well. Let me start by saying that what is happening in the oil and gas sectors in Guyana is simply unprecedented. It has never been seen in any part of the world, regardless of the negatives that may be emanating from some sections of the media in Guyana and a few extremists, especially when it comes to the environment. But I'll speak a little on that too. But besides from the negatives coming from the media, some sections of the media and the opposition, what is happening in the oil and gas is a success story, not only for Guyana, but for oil and gas throughout the world. And that was mentioned only a few weeks ago by the head of Exxon, the chairman of Exxon, Mr. Darren Woods, that Guyana is actually a success story when it comes to oil and gas. Why I say that is that one, our success rate in discoveries offshore is unprecedented, be it onshore, be it shallow, be it deep. We have achieved success rate which have never been heard of anywhere in the world. So that is the first thing I wanted to mention. The pace at which the sector is being developed, we have never seen that as well too. Moving from discovery in May of 2015 to forest oil in December of 2019 to today, producing at approximately 645,000 barrels per day is quite unprecedented. And we are poised as a country because we've already signed a few other production license, for example, the Yellowtail, which will come on stream next year, Then we have Waru, which will come on stream the other year, and we are in the process of approving Whiptail, which will come on stream in 2027, early 2028. So we are well on our way to move towards almost 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day by ending 2027, early 2028. And this has never happened anywhere in the world. That is why I'm saying this. Another point to note too is the creation of the Natural Resources Fund. Now, many countries around the world, and people like to use Norway as a model country when it comes to the management of oil and gas, the oil and gas sector. Norway, for example, took over 30 years to establish their sovereign wealth fund. Kuwait, for example, took over 30 years to establish their sovereign wealth fund. If you look at a few other oil producing countries, some of them took 10 years, 8 years, 15 years to establish that sovereign wealth fund so that the revenue from oil and gas can flow directly into a dedicated account, which is our natural resources fund. We took 2 years from production to when we would have passed the amended um, Natural Resources Fund bill in Parliament in December of 2021. 2 years. A bill that we had to amend to ensure that there is proper safeguard, to ensure proper transparency and accountability with regards to withdrawals from the fund. And we should know by now that there is only two ways that we can withdraw money from that fund, which is being held in the Federal Bank in the US. One is through revenue flowing from the Natural Resources Fund into our national budget, which must be approved by the National Assembly, the Parliament. And the second occasion is if there is a natural disaster of national proportion that requires us to get or to access revenue from this account to restore people to their former state. And in that case, too, it must be approved by the National Assembly. So when we hear all the misinformation, especially from the opposition and some sections of media, with regards to squandering oil revenue or oil revenue being used without accountability, it is not true. It's only the parliament that can approve outflows from the Natural Resources Fund into the Consolidated Fund or into the national budget. And on both occasions, it must be approved by the National Assembly. I'm mentioning that point because it is important that our viewers understand that the government cannot take out money from the Natural Resources Fund as they like or as we like, but it must be through parliamentary approval. And we did that. We strengthened the Natural Resources Fund Act to ensure that there's these safeguards in place. On the inflow of revenue, the Minister of Finance must report to the National Assembly on a quarterly basis all the revenue received from oil and gas, be it our share of crude or the royalty flowing into the account. Failing to do so, there are harsh penalties, I must say, for the Minister of Finance. So simplified now that anyone from anywhere around the world could actually go online, look at our gazette, our national gazette, and you will see the inflow of revenue from the oil and gas sector into the Natural Resources Fund. So at any given year, anyone can add down, and you know the total revenue received from the Natural Resources Fund or from oil and gas. The other point I want to make is that there is this theory that because we have the largest budget ever presented in the history of our country of $1.14 trillion, that we are utilizing all of the oil revenue. And that is being peddled by the opposition in Guyana again, that it is an oil and gas budget. That because we have revenue, we can present oil revenue, we can present a budget of such proportion. And that is not quite true. That is not quite true. It's only about 25%. It's only about 25% of that budget. The revenue is coming from the Natural Resources Fund, 200 and something $billion, as a matter of fact. that will flow from the Natural Resources Fund into the national budget. The majority of the revenue that will flow into that budget or to satisfy the budgetary allocation, it will be coming from taxes. And I'm saying that positively because the Guyanese people know that in budget 2024 or since we took over government, we have not increased any taxes or we have not introduced any new taxes. Our tax base, our tax collection has basically increased mainly because of the expansion of our economy, mainly because of all the new investments that are coming into the country, and not only in oil and gas, in agriculture, in tourism. We have about 10 new hotels being built right now, for example. So it's all the sectors that we are seeing investment coming into the country. We are seeing more people coming into the job pool now, and we are also seeing a lot of small and medium scale businesses in Guyana owned by Guyanese now. So mainly
Understand.
because of that, we have seen an expansion of the economy and an increase in the taxes. It is
Minute.
not because we would have increased taxes.
Yeah, Minister, you touched on something that I want to use as a transition point, and I'll invite my colleague, Dr. Ryan, to go out right after this point. But you indicated the strategy the government has taken to insulate the sector, establishing the sovereign wealth fund very rapidly as to compare to its benchmarks, as you would put it, in the world. Given you also legislate the local content to ensure that the Guyanese population and Guyanese business sector receive the reward from the oil and gas, can you provide us any updates on the local content area as to what the oil sector would have contributed maybe this current year or last year? And I'll invite my colleague, Dr. Narain, to go after that question.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that, Andrew, because that is another area in which I think we would have taken a bold step as a government. Because again, many oil producing countries in the world, they have not moved to a local content legislation. What they do have is a local content policy in place. We have moved to legislation. We have moved to legislate it to compel the oil companies to ensure that they have to or they must do business with Guyanese companies, that they must train and employ Guyanese. And already we are seeing the benefit of that legislation. One, with direct employment, we have over 6,000 Guyanese now working in the oil and gas sector. And taking into consideration the short period of time and the growing sector, it is quite significant. 6,000 over 6,000 Guyanese working in the sector is quite significant because we know that the oil and gas sector is not really labor intensive; it's more capital intensive. It will never employ the amount of people that is employed in agriculture, or mining, or forestry. So 6,000 is quite significant, but we are not satisfied. We are working right now to build out the Guyana Technical Training College in Borbis, in Port Moran, Borbis, to ensure that we train more of our people so that they can be employed directly in the sector. The other area is businesses. And you know, in Schedule 1, there are 40 basic services, or we call them carve-outs. At that time, we placed 40 services in consultation with the operator, with private sector, with every single stakeholder, because we had to be fair and truthful to ourselves in terms of the capacity that we possess right now in Guyana. However, that has been expanding, our capacity has been improving on a daily basis. So, but what we do find now is that even if a company is coming to Guyana to offer a service that is not in Schedule 1, they're still looking for a local partner. And I think the local content legislation has forced them basically into start looking for local partners in anticipation that the act can change or the schedule can change at any point in time. So it has bring tremendous opportunity to the local private sector. We have seen many success stories when it comes to small entrepreneur growing. And only recently we had a testimonial done by a taxi driver or the owner of a taxi service, transportation service. He started 3 years ago. He had 5 motor vehicles. Today, you probably have 105 motor vehicles simply because of this. Accommodation, today we see apartment buildings almost in every single community in Guyana, mainly because we put tremendous business opportunities um, for the private sector in which they're taking advantage of. But I think that they can do much more working together in partnership, doing joint ventures with local and foreign investors. That's an area I think that we can strengthen on as a local priority.
Understand. I'll ask Dr. Narayan for your question, sir.
Um, with all due with all due respect, Mr. Minister, one cannot be dismissive of the opposition's questions or their accusations. They must be answered. And I'll preface my question with this. When I was about 8 years old, my grandfather asked me, if someone asks you for a dime, not a dime, in those days it was like a bit, 8 cents. And he said, you don't have anything in your pocket. Can you give him that bit? If my pocket is empty, how can I give him that bit? Now, here's my question. You mentioned the natural fund and natural resource fund. For the Guyanese, their security does not reside in verbal promises. What goes into that fund is what they want to know, and how that fund would be accessible to them. Can you elaborate on that?
All right, so thank you. Let me start by saying that I agree with you that we need to work with every single stakeholder once they're serious about development and once they want to work with us too in developing Guyana, be it the opposition, be it any other stakeholder. Opposition, they're in parliament. They can ask any question. We have an obligation to answer. But it is the misinformation and the lies that are being peddled sometimes and trying to mislead or hoodwink the population for political gains. That is what we have a problem with. But in terms of working together and answering legitimate question, we have never had a problem with that. Now, the point that you raise, it's a very good point because every single Guyanese, be it in and out of Guyana, that is the question is that it asks every single day. How will we benefit from the oil revenue? Now, in Guyana, we are already seeing the benefits from this new sector and from the expansion of the other sectors. For example, the infrastructure that is taking place in Guyana. Now, we would have done infrastructure in the past, yes, but the pace and the amount of infrastructure, the quantity that is happening right now wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the new revenue that flowing into the country and the investment that is coming into the country. For example, we have developed the new Heroes Highway, which some people think was impossible. We are doing the highway from Ogle all the way to Eccles that would link back to the Heroes Highway. Some people think that will never be possible. We're doing the 4-lane high-rise bridge across the Demerara River. Again, some people thought that would not be possible. At some point in time, I thought that seeing a bridge across the Bauxite River would have been impossible. Today we have a bridge, and now we're talking about high-rise bridge across the Bauxite River. Now we're talking a bridge to Suriname. Now we're doing the road to Brazil from the Linden to Mabur. We start from the Linden to Mabur stretch. So these are some infrastructure work that are ongoing now that will benefit everyone. If we go to the gas energy project, which I've mentioned it on this program before, and I've mentioned it several times, and I'll keep doing that, because the gas to energy project will be the single most transformational project in the history of our country. It will be the project that will benefit every single Guyanese in some way or the other, whether they are on the on the grid where they would receive cheaper electricity, reliable electricity, clean electricity, or if they're off grid and they will benefit from the massive manufacturing that will take place in Guyana that will afford them cheaper goods and services in our own country. So that single project, and it's only because of this new sector. It is only because of this new sector. So that one project I can point to as a project that is ongoing right now. Once completed early next year, electricity bill will be cut by 50%. We won't have the kind of blackout or power outages that we're having right now. And we're having that issue right now mainly because of the age generating sets that we have at GPL, and also the massive increase in demand. You would not believe it. I don't know how recent you were in Guyana, but you would not believe it that our demand grew from 145 megawatts to almost 190 megawatts in about 1 year. In about 1 year. And that will give you a sense of the kind of development that is taking place in Guyana. And just imagine when the new hotels are completed, when the new hospitals are completed, when all the headquarters are being built now for the oil companies are completed, you can only imagine the demand that will be there. So that is why this project is so important. But it's not only about clean, reliable, cheap electricity. It is a project that will build out our manufacturing industrial sector, something that we have never really capitalized on because of the cost of power and the unreliability of it in the past. Because we export all our primary products. If you check about I like to give this example because it's simple. If you check a box of toothpick that is in the home of most Guyanese today, it is made in China. I have nothing against China, but I'm just telling you that we can manufacture these things right here in Guyana. And it can be possible, it will be possible because of the gas energy project. So that is just two areas. On the social side, we have reinstated the cash grant for our children. Every single school child this year will receive 45,000 Guyana dollars, whether you go to private school or whether you go to public school. The president has made a promise that university education will be free within our 5 years in government. We have increased old age pension, public assistance to or differently able people, and there's so many other areas. The reinstatement of the bonus to the joint services. This is the only country that we give a bonus to pensioners. So these are just Guyanese are benefiting from a day-to-day basis, mainly because of the revenue stream that is coming in now and the expansion of the economy. Mind you, as I mentioned, the budget is only about 25 to 30% of the budget is from the oil and gas fund. So it's not that we are using out all of the oil money on what is happening in Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Narayan, I'll ask you for a follow, but I know Dr. Ramdas is jumping to go at this area as well. So I'll ask him to ask this question here, as I know he's motivated about the gas and oil and gas sector as well.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Minister. I was very impressed and happy to learn that you were a project manager with the United Nations Development Program. This demonstrates your commitment to international collaboration and sustainable development. As a follow up on the NRF, I was wondering if we should have NRFs one, which is oil, that's already established successfully, and NRF two for gold, NRF three for manganese, and then a fourth one for log exports. At the same time, to enhance these funds, we can have value added to our exports. So that's the first uh, comment. And then the second one relating to NRFs has to do with the opportunity to enhance our international taxation. The OECD and G20 countries, they set up a framework on base erosion and profit sharing, BEPS, which calls for a 15% effective minimum corporate tax. So there are currently 145 countries, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and CARICOM countries that have signed on to the BEPS. So, as a separate question, could Guyana use its constitutional rights as well as the signatory privileges under the BEPS to capture some of that 15%? So I'll pause there and let you address the funds and then the international BEPS.
Thank you, Doc. I realize most of your comments were recommendation or what you think might be best for us to move forward. But I like the point that you, with the first question, I like the point that you made with value added, because that is basically where we have to head as a country. Because to truly realize the potential of your resources, you must add value. You must be engaged in downstream activities. Otherwise, you don't enjoy the true benefits of your resources, and that has happened to us, primary products. On the suggestion of NRF for different sectors, I hear you, but the oil revenue obviously is way more, a lot more than revenue that will flow in from gold or from the forestry sector. Nevertheless, we have independent commission that are managing these sectors. For example, in mining, we have the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. For forestry, we have the Guyana Forestry Commission, even though it falls directly under the Ministry of Natural Resources. There's a different mechanism in place. For example, in Guyana, for large scale companies, the royalties flow directly into the consolidated fund, whereas the small and medium scale royalty will go to the is remitted to the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission for the day-to-day operation of the sector. So there are different mechanisms in place. We haven't really considered setting up specialized fund for mining or for forestry. On the other that issue of taxation, it is something that we have discussed, and we possibly look at it in the as we move forward. Because what we have been busy doing, to be quite honest, is to build out the framework to manage the sector. Because it's moving so fast, we have to ensure that we put a proper framework in place to manage the sector. I know that we may not have the best deal in the Stabrook agreement in terms of the taxation, but our new PSA, our new production sharing agreement, the fiscal conditions have changed there to reflect exactly the 15% that you mentioned. So it's something that we're definitely looking at as we move forward. But at the same time, we need to take into consideration too that oil and gas exploration is not attracting the kind of financial support or backings as it used to in the past. You find that financing for new exploration activities is dwindling, and it is becoming more difficult every single day, especially with countries committing to moving towards RE and cutting emission, renewable energy and cutting emission. You find that there is a lot of pressure now on exploration companies. So to remain competitive too, you got to take all this into consideration, because many are producing countries and they've utilized their resources over a long period of time to where they are today. We are new in the sector. We are utilizing the resources as best as possible to develop the country and to create a better life for our people. So we need to keep it attractive at the same time. But it's definitely something that we would have discussed, and you would see some amount of reflection of that in our new production sharing agreement as well too.
But just a quick thing. Are we planning to be a signatory to the VEPS? That's the critical question.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not in a position to say no or to say yes at this point in time. Of course, that would be a more of a policy decision
Yeah,
taken at the cabinet level, other
Right.
than
yeah.
the
Okay,
minister
yeah.
alone making a decision.
Right.
Same thing,
Dr.
same
Ganga,
question has been asked of us. The same question has been asked of us about OPEC, whether we will join OPEC or not. So, as a collective, we will have to take a decision at some point in
right.
time.
Dr. Ganga, I think that was a wonderful question. I think the minister also, the approach here, I think Guyana has demonstrated through the president's position a lot of these topics that we can't apply a cookie cutter approach to Guyana. It's taking a very robust,
Yeah,
different, fresh perspective to manage.
yes, the oil companies are doing profit maximization.
Yeah. And
We are attempting cost minimization, but there is this external opportunity which we should position ourselves in order to take advantage as soon as our parliament make the decision. But
right.
we can be a signatory and just face things over time as well. We don't have to wait, but we position ourselves strategically, and that would help Guyana in the future.
Right, valid point, Dr. Ganga. I think it's a wonderful point, and Minister has indicated some additional sort of thought will happen there. Minister, I know as we began the program, you spoke about oil and gas, and I want to shift gears to talk a little about gold and bauxite and manganese as areas of critical sort of natural resource investment the government and your ministry is undertaking. Can you provide us an update in that regard and maybe some key takeaways for our viewership in both in Guyana and the diaspora, and what maybe are some challenges that your ministry is foreseeing given you have new conditioning, global climate changes, etc.?
All right, yeah. Let me say that mining still contributes significantly to our GDP. As a matter of fact, mining is the second highest contributor to our GDP. Mining employs directly and indirectly maybe 30, 40,000 Guyanese. So it's a sector that we still have to continue to incentivize and continue to build out. Taking into consideration our commitment in the Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030, because we have committed to ensuring that we keep our forests intact. We have committed to ensuring that we keep our deforestation below 0.07%. And that is something that we're proud of because right now it is 0.036%. And we are still working towards reducing that even further, while at the same time keeping these sectors viable. So as an agency, GGMC, we have to move in a different direction. We have to ensure that we keep the sector viable, but at the same time, the environment is a priority for us. Same with logging, that the forest and environment is a priority for us. And that is a point I want to make before I continue, Andrew, is that we are not in a mad rush to extract oil and to extract gold and to cut trees for logging while neglecting our environmental responsibilities or our responsibilities and obligation in the low carbon development strategy and all the other agreements that we would have signed on to with regards to preserving our environment. And that is why His Excellency was right and so correct and forceful in making his point that we have one of the largest forests in this part of the world. We have one of the lowest deforestation rate, and our forest is a global asset. The world depends on us. So while many countries in the past have been going through industrialization, cutting down their forests and building factories and plant power plants and all that, we have saved our forests. It's intact. We have continued mining at an artisanal level, and we have a few large scale company. But we are ensuring that we work towards safe mining practices, or we say mine with the environment in mind. That is key. I wanted to mention that point before I continue. So as I mentioned, mining is still one of the big contributor to our GDP. It employs a lot of Guyanese. It creates opportunities for a lot of Guyanese. However, the weather hasn't been too kind for us, and I'm happy that you mentioned climate change and what is happening, because I'm sure you're following what is happening. In 2021, when we took over, there was a flooding. I personally went into the Mazaruni area where most of the mining activities is done, and the water was about 15 feet high than normal. 2022, same situation. 2023 was the total opposite situation, where we have this prolonged, and it's continuing into 2024, where we have this prolonged dry spell. That most of these rivers, this very river that was 15 feet higher than normal, you cannot even go in now with a boat because of the rocks and the sandbanks that are visible, clearly visible now. So the weather hasn't been too kind to us at all. Not only mining, but agriculture and all the other sectors, and not only Guyana, but Suriname, Brazil, and many other countries are experiencing this particular weather pattern for the last year or so. Nevertheless, our gold mining sector continues to expand, especially at the large scale level. What we have seen is at the medium, small scale level, we have seen a few operators moving to other sectors, especially construction in the oil and gas sector. We have seen some workers as well moving towards those operators, truck drivers moving towards those sectors. But what we have realized is that our large scale exploration companies, while we were focusing on everything else, quietly they have been doing exploration. And we have companies to date sitting on 6.5 million ounces of gold. We have another company on another 2 million ounces of gold. OMI is back doing exploration, sitting on over 4 million ounces of gold. So our proven resources in the gold sector to date is probably about 15 million ounces of gold that already been discovered by large scale company. Soon we'll be signing an agreement with one large scale company that'll be operating in the Oko Region 7 area. And that company, when in production in another 3 years from today, would produce about 200,000 ounces per day. Our existing large scale gold company, which is the Aurora Gold Mine, they have ventured into underground mining for the very first time. And I've personally been into the underground operation, and I can tell you it's world class, and it's not a little chute that you're going through, but you can actually drive into the underground facility. That is the kind of investment that we're seeing in the sector. So there is a large amount of investment in the large scale gold mining operation, in which we will see the results in another 3-4 years from now. Because that is how the sector works. You do your exploration for 3-4 years, maybe 5 years, and then you start building your mine based on your discoveries. And we may very well see another 2, 3, maybe 4 large scale gold company in another 3-4 years from now. So the future for gold looks good. Unlike oil, gold doesn't have that pressure like oil and gas, because we know oil and gas, the window is probably closing in on oil and gas in terms of demand and the massive demand for building materials. For example, aggregate, stone, loom, sand. We are seeing massive increase in production and in extraction locally. And I can give you an example. For example, stone quarry. When we took over in 2020, the production was 600,000 tons per year. Today, we are producing over 2 million tons annually, but yet we cannot meet the demand. It's just an indication as to what is happening in terms of development in the country. So we have continued to work with operators, existing operators, and we have issued some new license to new operators, some of whom have already started to produce. Some of those new quarry are already producing, taking our production, and we're hoping that in another 2-3 years from now, we can move that quarry production to maybe 4 or 5 million tons annually. Hopefully, we'll satisfy the local demand, but I know that is growing at the same time too. Sand and loom is another area which we have seen massive demand for. In the manganese sector, we have one manganese company operating in the Northwest District. The manganese, we have seen an increase in production last year over 2022, 2022 being the fourth year when we started to produce manganese again after maybe about 50 years. So we're into our third year of production for manganese now. In terms of bauxite, bauxite has always been important to Guyana, mainly because of its history and significance and jobs that are created in the sector. We have two bauxite company operating in Guyana right now, one in the Demerara River, not too far from across the river from the international airport, the Bonsika area. And then we have the one in Linden. Some people might know it as Lin Mine from back in the days, but now it is called Bauxite. A Chinese company has taken over. So what we have seen now is that the Chinese company in Linden has been expanding their operation. Only recently we have issued a permit for remnant deposit, which probably holds about another 3 million tons of bauxite ore. And they're also investing in a new pit or a new area right now, which will see their production doubling this year compared to last year. While at the same time, we're working with the other company too. So again, the future for bauxite looks good. We are not too worried about the quarrying sector because sand, loom, aggregates, the demand will continue to increase every single day because of the development that is taking place. The
Understand.
gold industry, the large scale company will start to produce in another 3 or 4 years. Bauxite as well, we're growing that sector. Manganese, diamonds. We had a decline last year in diamond production, mainly because of what is happening in the world market and competition from other parts of the world too. But it is an area that we are continuing to work on. We find that most miners are more inclined to go after gold mining rather than diamonds. So
Right.
it's an area that we have some work to do.
Understand. Let me invite Dr. Narayan to ask us questions here.
Yeah, Minister, I can't say that I understand all the nuances of these things, but I'm trying to put myself in the place of my hundreds of Guyanese friends and relatives that are there, and they hear your comments. Yes, we are producing all of this, we are doing all of this, we're having all of this income. Most of these resources, what you're talking about, are expatriated. And I have my rural relatives sitting there asking themselves the question, how does this benefit me? I can hear about all of this, all of these resources, all of this funding, all of these accumulation. Now I can understand the developmental aspects and things like that. But to the average Guyanese, they want to know how those resources are being utilized, not only in building roads and bridges and dams, because that's not their everyday existence. And unless you can explain this in simple terms to them, then you can't blame the opposition for capitalizing on that lack of explanation of the benefits derived from what you have just mentioned, all of these sources of income, whether it's minerals, whether it's oil, whether it's lumber. How do you answer a question like that?
All right. So let me say first of all that small and medium scale gold mining can only be done by Guyanese. It's reserved for Guyanese only. The large scale mining can be done by Guyanese or foreign investors. So there is no way a foreign investor can be engaged in small or medium scale mining in Guyana unless they are partnering with a local company or a local landowner or a local miner. So that is a direct way in which Guyanese can benefit from the sector, in that they themselves are engaged directly in gold mining. The large scale company, for example, I mentioned a new company that we're going to sign on to soon, sorry. They are going to create 1,500 jobs during construction and then 500 during production. This is direct benefit to Guyanese again. The quarry operation in Guyana, be it sand, be it stone, be it loom, are all done by Guyanese companies. It is only the large scale company, the two bauxite company, the manganese company, and the one large scale gold company that are foreign companies. All other mining activities in Guyana are done by locals or by Guyanese. So I just wanted to make that first point to show direct benefit to Guyanese. I know you spoke of the revenue that flows from the sector, but again, I can take you back to the explanation that I gave earlier with regards to oil revenue, because it goes into the national budget, and that is where we see the allocation being spent on different communities throughout the entire country, be it education, be it health, be it infrastructure, be it social services. So I think the same explanation can hold for that part of the question too.
With all due respect, Mr. Minister, I wasn't talking about this one or two small companies that you have in Guyana. And I'm not illiterate when it comes to things like that. I am talking about the benefits that are accrued to the rural, the average villager in that sense. When the average villager looks at what the government is doing, they ask themselves, because to give an example, I every week I hear, why am I getting blackouts and we are all producing company? Why are we having not earning enough? And we are supposed to have all of this income coming in. You don't you focus on things to me that you are providing the opposition with the ammunition necessary for them to criticize the government. You're talking about building hotels. You're talking about these few companies that can manufacture. When Omai is the largest, I am asking a simple question. How do you explain to the average villager the benefits that they are accruing from the wealth that you are saying Guyana is now producing and accruing?
All right,
I'll
so
ask you to answer. Yeah, Minister, go ahead.
let me take you back to a headline. Let me take you back to a headline that was in the Kaichur News maybe a few months back. The headline was big. People are starving, and they put a picture of maybe somebody living on the street. People are starving in oil-rich Guyana. Now, you and I know, all of us know, that you will starve anywhere in the world if you don't have intention of to work and to earn honestly. You will starve anywhere, whether the country is an oil-rich country or not. If you go on Liberty Avenue, mind you, I've now not been this, you will see people there too. If you go in any part of the world, if you don't work, you will starve. The other thing too is that I think we are being unfair to what is happening. Now we want, and we've always done this in the past, comparing Guyana to the US, to Singapore, to Canada. We have only started to produce oil December of 2019. December of 2019. Some of these countries have been producing oil for centuries. Trinidad has produced oil for over 100 years, 60 years, 80 years. And we expect Guyana to automatically in 4 years be like those countries. It takes time. It's a process. So I'm sure it is going to happen, but we cannot be unfair. We cannot be unfair at the same time to say But look at these oil producing countries, and you're producing oil. We're producing oil only 4 years now. So when you say that, we have to take into consideration that is only a short period of time, and development takes time. When you ask the question
I
about how people in the community, no, no, when you ask people the question about how you are benefited in the community, I don't know when last you came to Guyana, but you go into the communities in Region 6. Every single street is a concrete road. Almost every single home have a
that's
car.
not the point,
Almost every
Mr.
single
Minister.
child is going to
I'm
school.
not
It
arguing.
is not the
I'm not
whole
arg-
Guyana that you knew of.
Yeah,
I
I,
am
I
not
think I think
arguing.
this is a I think it's a good question, a good response. I'll say
eh,
this to move on and move on to Dr. Ganga.
Can you allow me one
I'll
follow up?
I'll allow a follow up after Dr. Ganga.
Yes.
But I just want
No,
to
but
make a
I
transition.
would like for the
I just
minister to tell
I
me
would just like a
how
transition. I think
do they
Dr. Narayan,
translate this to the average Guyanese? For me, I accept what you're saying.
yeah.
I know some of the problems, but what I'm saying is that you don't have to convince me. I'm convinced. How do you go about convincing the average Guyanese the benefits that they are already receiving?
So I think I I,
Dr.
I,
Narayan,
I
Dr.
think,
Narayan,
Mr.
if I
Prasad, that
may,
when the average Guyanese can get a scholarship for themselves or a child, they're benefiting. When they can go through the street that is well built, they're benefiting. When they can get cheaper power from the gas energy project, they're benefiting. When their child can receive a cash grant of $45,000, they're benefiting. When their parents can receive an increased old age pension, they're benefiting. So I don't know
Well,
what
then that
else you're pointing towards, but those are all benefits for the ordinary Guyanese.
yeah, I think it's sufficient for us to move on because I think what Dr. Narayan is trying to convey, and I think Minister you already answered it, but really what do we do to counter the narrative that is being peddled by the opposite side? And it's my humble view that if you respond to certain aspects of propaganda, you legitimize it. So let's move on to Dr. Ganga for a moment here. Dr. Ganga, a
Yes,
question on the
I think
goals.
Professor Narayan was addressing a distributional issue, which can be accommodated and tackled later on. What I have in mind is a structural one. When I was attending University of Guyana, we criticized the configuration of the economy. We said Guyana was a primary raw materials exporter. We need to change that by perhaps by placing a ban on the export of raw materials and let it go to a second stage of processing so we could revise the local content value added laws in Guyana related to the mining sector in selected areas. If you go through the list, bauxite, of course, alumina will come later with the oil and gas. Um, Manganese should be considered as export of oxide rather than the primary base ore. All ore should go through some form of processing. That would expand the opportunities for all Guyanese in one way or the other. Same with diamond and gold. We need to put local content laws in terms of value added and not in terms of 51% management and so forth. We need to get to, as Chetty would say, we need to get down to brass tacks. And brass tacks means do the real thing. They must do processing. The old argument was we have been a primary producer of raw materials. We need to change that by placing a ban on the export of raw materials and let it go to the next higher stage of processing.
Yeah, Dr. Ganga, I don't want your question to be diluted. Just maybe refine it for the minister. But minister, you can respond either to that comment.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Daganga completely. As a matter of fact, that is what we have been advocating for a very long time. But as I explained earlier, the main reason why we have never really ventured into value added, which we should, is because of power, the cost of power generation, the reliability of it. Take, for example, the alumina plant. aluminum. You made reference to the aluminum plant. It requires significant amount of power to run an aluminum plant, which we don't have at the moment, but which could be possible later with the development of the gas energy project, the 165 megawatts from the Milo Falls, and additional 35 meg from solar as we move forward. So in the future, or that is what we are gearing towards in the future, to move towards more value added. In order to make it economical too, we have to look at our volume of production. For example, we've been speaking with some investors to set up a gold refinery in Guyana. But when you look at our production right now, which is averaging around 450, 500,000 ounces of gold, it is just not economical to establish that refinery as yet, leaving out the amount of power required to run that facility. So it's one power to the amount of feedstock or production, the output that we need to put out. So these are some of the things that we're working on. When the 3 or 4 large scale gold companies start to produce a gold very well feasible or possible in Guyana. When we start looking at our new deposits of bauxite and we have cheaper power, an alumina plant might be possible. When we have cheaper power, a bottling factory or a glass factory might be possible because we have one of the best quality of silica sand here. So you're right, there are a number of opportunities, but we just have to ensure that we put the basic infrastructure in place. And in this case, it is power, because power is so critical to all of these sectors.
Understand. Minister, time is against us, but I'll invite comments on or an update quickly on forestry. I know you essentially alluded to it several occasions this evening, but can you provide us a brief update on the forestry situation? As you spoke about global warming, I was to learn that there was some wildfire incidents in Guyana, etc. Can you provide us some context into the forestry sector?
Yeah, so as I would have mentioned, we're the second most forested country in the world. 87% of Guyana is forest, as all of you know. Suriname being number one with 91, 92%. But we have a very good forest management system in place. The forestry sector employs maybe another 30 to 40,000 people directly and indirectly as well. So it is important that we keep that sector alive, but at the same time address the concerns with regards to deforestation and managing the forests. So how do we keep the sector viable while at the same time reducing deforestation rate? The answer points back to what Dr. Ganga mentioned about value added. That is the only way we can do it. I know Dr. Ganga mentioned or throw the idea of banning certain exports. But if we look at it logically too at the same time, in the forestry sector, for example, there are a few countries that ban the exportation of wrong wood or logs. But as a result of that, it increased their deforestation rate because they had to, because you're not exporting as much as, or you're not exporting at all, it means that you're not gaining the revenue from the export of logs. So it simply means that the agency will not receive the kind of revenue that they used to in the past. So to compensate that, it simply means that you have to cut more. So you have to be careful with that too, because if you place a ban, it might simply result in people cutting more logs, or the commission encouraging more logging so that they can gain the revenue that they were gaining when they were exporting raw wood. So we have to look at that scenario as well. But what we do have in place is what we call the log export policy. Simply means that we encourage the exportation of the lesser known species. Because in Guyana, you ask any Guyanese, when they go to the sawmill, they know about greenheart, purple heart, kabakali, silver belly, mora, or whatever. They don't know about the rest. We have 1,000 different species. So, and some of them are very good quality. So what we are doing is that we are encouraging the exploitation of the lesser used or lesser known species, while we place a restriction on species that are being used locally. So that basically, in a nutshell, is what the log export policy is doing. So it enables us to earn from the exploitation, as well as to satisfy the local demand on the market, which has increased significantly. Our deforestation rate now is 0.036. The intention is to keep it there or carry down even further. Our commitment in the low carbon development strategy is 0.07%, which is way above what we are right now. So we are well within our commitment in the low carbon development strategy. But the way forward is value added. We need a furniture factory, a recognized world class furniture factory in Guyana, so that these hotels that are being built right now, they can purchase furniture right here from Guyana instead of importing it, which, coming back to Professor Prasad, which will create opportunities for Guyanese, because it means that you can actually set up businesses that surround yourself around that furniture factory. You can feed off it, spin offs as we call it. You can gain direct employment as a result of it. So we have to move towards value added. What we've been pushing the sector to do is to utilize wood waste. So now we see some companies are moving towards this, doing the mulch, as we call it in the US, to keep down the grass and all that. And we find some companies now packaging the coals very nicely that we can start to export, and it's not in a old rice bag as we used to see it in the past. So we are seeing all these things happening. What is of significant um, improvement, or what is happening in the sector, is that we have had a local investor manufacturing these prefab wooden homes. Most of it is being sold in Barbados, some in St. Vincent, some in the other islands. Already, we probably shipped out a few hundred of those homes already. And they are using the lesser known species. And mind you, some of those species are as good as green heart or purple heart. So we have been focusing a lot on value added, as Dr. Ganga mentioned. Um, not so much in terms of setting up a gold refinery alumina plant, but moving towards value added in the forestry sector, because that will help us to keep our deforestation rate down while keeping the sector alive, because it employs a lot of Guyanese, especially in the indigenous communities. We have a lot of indigenous communities involved in mining as well as logging. We have a lot of these associations in Region 10 and Region 1 that are involved in logging, and these are ordinary Guyanese who depend on the sector, and who may never seek an employment in the oil and gas sector because they're comfortable in the logging or mining sector. And as a government, we have a responsibility to ensure that we continue to incentivize those sectors and to expand it and create more opportunities for those people.
Understand. Minister, I know you spoke, well about the oil, gas sector, gold, bauxite, and other natural resources or minerals. I think one of the common theme that I sense from tonight's discussion was all of this good work your ministry and government is doing. How do you capitalize on the messaging to the local Guyanese? I think that is a key area for maybe some additional focus, because I think the Guyanese abroad and at home, while you can't respond to every assertion or allegation or narrative in the media, how do you capitalize on the messaging that the local household, as Dr. Narayan puts it, can benefit from, see and make that connection? And I think after that, your commentary on that, I'll move to Shemiza for questions and final remarks.
No, but you're right. We need to continue to put the facts out there. That's why I commended you and the others for keeping this program going, because it gives us a platform to let people know what is happening in Guyana, other than reading it from Kaitra News or Starbuck News or some social media posts. And sometimes, we look at we don't look at the 99 good things, but we look at the one bad one. So I agree that we need, as a government and as a country, because the responsibility is not only on the government, but it's all of us, need to play a part in highlighting what is happening in Guyana. and the opportunities that are available in Guyana and the transformation that is taking place in Guyana. So I agree that we need to do more PR on that. We need to do more sensitization. We need to outline our plans and programs and policies as well too, to so that people can understand what our thinking, what our vision, and what we have in plans. And at the same time, show the benefits that are being derived at this point in time and what will come in another 6 years from now or another 10 years from now. Because we're only starting to develop right now. And another 6 years from now, Guyana will not be the same. It will be totally different. But at the same time, we want people to benefit. We want people to be on that journey with us as we develop the country so that no one will be left behind. So I think that is the point Professor was making, that we need to ensure that people understand and people know how benefits are being derived from the new sector or from the revenue that is coming into the country. So yes, we need, all of us need to ensure that we highlight, because sometimes it's so easy to highlight the negatives. It's fun. It brings a lot of attention to you. But when you speak of the good things, people don't like to hear that. But you mention the one bad thing, people will latch on to that, and they would publicize that, and they would harp on it, and they would sensationalize it. But at the same time, they will not look at the 99 good things that are happening in Guyana. And I think that maybe is something that we got to work on.
Precisely. I'll turn the floor over to Shamiza.
Mahendra. Thank you to our panel. Minister, I will now ask you for your closing remarks.
All right. So, Shamiz, let me thank you again, you and the team. I think we had a very robust discussion, which is how it should be. I think you presented me the platform to highlight what is happening in the natural resources sector. I want to recommit on behalf of His Excellency President Ali, Vice President Jack Deo, Prime Minister Mark Phillips, and the government of Guyana, because I know most of the people listening are not living in Guyana, but you're Guyanese and you're interested in what is happening here. We want to recommit you that we will work to building the Guyana that all of us dreamt of. Many of us living here and who would have left dreamt that Guyana can be that country that we want to leave for our children and our grandchildren. A country that we can have good health care, good education, good security, and we can live a good life. And we are committing or recommitting ourselves to building that Guyana that all of us want to see.
Thank you. Again, thank you to all of our viewers for their contribution to tonight's program, to our panel and our moderator and our guest tonight. Thank you very much. To our Muslim brothers and sisters, a very happy Eid on behalf of the Guyana Dialogue. We would also like to say to our Hindu brothers and sisters, a very blessed Navratri to everyone. Until next time, I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.